Chapter 21. Riverbank Encounters and the Enigmatic Maze. The riverbank shimmered under the late afternoon sun, its surface broken by the occasional ripple from a passing fish. Keven Kung sat cross-legged on a smooth, sun-warmed stone, the rhythmic lapping of water against the bank a familiar counterpoint to his thoughts. Beside him, Soraya knelt, her slender fingers tracing patterns in the damp earth, her gaze fixed on the water's flow. She had arrived at dawn, silent as a shadow, guided by Katheleen's whispered instruction to forget the past. Now, she spoke without looking up, her voice barely audible above the water's murmur. "Katheleen," said, "the past is a burden that chokes the present," she murmured. She said I must let it go, like leaves on the current. She plucked a fallen petal from the water's surface, watching it swirl away. But how does one forget the weight of a life lived? The faces, the voices, the pain. Her fingers tightened around the petal, then released it. It vanished beneath the surface. Keven turned his head slightly, observing the quiet turmoil in her eyes. He remembered Katheleen, the fiery spirit who'd once been a thorn in his side, now a reluctant guide. "Some burdens are meant to be carried," he said, his voice low and steady. "Others are meant to be shed. But forgetting that's a different kind of cage, Soraya." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Katheleen knows the weight of what she asks. She's seen the cost of clinging too tightly." He didn't mention the fire in Katheleen's eyes when she'd spoken of the past, the unspoken grief beneath her resolve. Soraya didn't need to know that. She finally met his gaze, her dark eyes holding a flicker of something raw. "Oh, then what do I hold on to?" she whispered. "Right now," Keven said gently, "hold on to the water beneath you. Hold on to the fact that you are here now. That is enough." He offered no grand promises, only the simple truth of the moment. Soraya's shoulders relaxed a fraction, the tension in her jaw easing as she watched the water carry away the last traces of the petal. Later, under the dappled shade of a willow tree near the training grounds, Edris Ni sat hunched over a scrap of rice paper, her brow furrowed in concentration. Keven knelt beside her, a brush held loosely in his hand. She had been struggling with the character for Sun for the third time that hour. "Again," Keven said softly, guiding her small hand over the paper. "The stroke must be smooth like a river finding its path, not jagged like a startled bird." His fingers brushed hers as he adjusted her grip, a brief, warm contact that made her breath catch. She focused on the line, the brush gliding with less resistance under his guidance. "Son," she whispered, the character finally taking shape, though the lines were still uneven. "Good. Now," Keven said, a small, genuine smile touching his lips. "Now, light." He wrote the character slowly, deliberately, showing her the flow. Edris Ni's cheeks flushed, but she didn't look away. She focused on his hand, on the way his fingers moved with quiet confidence. The simple act of teaching, of sharing this moment of quiet focus, felt like a thread weaving something new between them. She saw not just the man who had once been a thief, but the one who now patiently guided her through the labyrinth of characters, his patience a steady counterpoint to her own nervousness. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice barely audible, her eyes fixed on the character she was now attempting. Keven's smile deepened, a warmth spreading through him that had nothing to do with the sun. "It's not a burden to share knowledge," he replied, his voice softer than before. "It's a gift." He didn't say it, but he felt it, the unspoken understanding that this small, shared moment, this quiet tutoring, was building something more enduring than the fleeting moments of their shared past. The urgent message arrived not with a bird, but with a breathless, trembling messenger, his robe torn at the shoulder, his face pale with exertion. He thrust a small, sealed scroll into Emmett's hands, his voice a hoarse whisper. "The cave, southern cave, Willis, is fading. The water, it's wrong." Emmett's face drained of color. He looked up at Keven, his eyes wide with a fear Keven had never seen before. "Willis, he's not just ill. The transformation water, it's turning against him. We must go now." Keven met Edris Ni's eyes, the quiet moment of connection shattered by the harsh reality of the scroll. "But," he nodded, the movement sharp, decisive. "Pack quickly. Soraya, you know the way. He didn't need to ask. She was already rising, her earlier fragility replaced by a focused calm. Edris Ni wordlessly began gathering the few essentials they brought, her hands moving with swift, quiet efficiency, her earlier shyness replaced by urgent purpose. The journey south was a blur of urgency. They moved swiftly through the forest, the path winding deeper into the mountains. The air grew thick with a scent of damp earth and pine, the usual serenity replaced by a palpable tension. Edris Ni walked close to Keven, her hand briefly brushing his sleeve as they navigated a rocky slope, a silent reassurance. The entrance to the southern cave was hidden behind a curtain of cascading water, the roar of the falls masking the passage within. Beyond the falls, the air grew cool and damp, the sound of dripping water echoing in the cavernous space. The path ahead was not a natural cave, but a meticulously crafted maze of shifting stone walls, designed to confuse and trap. Keven led the way, his sword held loosely at his side, his eyes scanning the walls for the subtle clues that would guide them through. "This is Shuming's work," Edris Ni whispered, her voice tight with anxiety for Willis. "He's been studying the transformation water. He must have left a trail." Keven nodded, his gaze fixed on the walls. The stones seemed to shift subtly as they moved, creating new dead ends. He stopped before a section of wall where the carvings were faintly different, a pattern of interlocking circles. "Here," he murmured, "the water flows in circles. The path must follow the flow." "Now, there." Soraya stepped forward, her eyes closing as she reached out a hand towards the wall. A faint, almost imperceptible shimmer of light passed through her fingers, illuminating a single, almost invisible line in the stone. "This way," she said, her voice calm, guiding them through the shifting labyrinth. They moved through the maze, the walls shifting around them, the air thick with the scent of ancient stone and damp moss. Each turn was a gamble, each step a test of their resolve. Edris Ni clutched Keven's sleeve tighter as a section of wall suddenly slid shut behind them, sealing them in a small, dark chamber. "We trapped," she breathed, panic rising. Keven placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch grounding. "Look," he said, his voice steady. "The pattern." He pointed to a faint, glowing symbol etched into the floor, a circle within a circle. "The water flows through the center. We follow the symbol." They stepped onto the symbol, and the wall before them slid open silently. The path ahead was clear, the shifting walls no longer a threat. They moved forward, the maze behind them a testament to Shuming's cunning, but also to the clues he'd left for those who could see them. The cave opened into a vast, cathedral-like chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow. In the center stood Waylon, his presence a quiet, immense force. He wore his usual dark robes, his expression calm, almost serene, as he observed the three travelers. Before him, on a stone slab, lay Willis, his breathing shallow, his skin pale, his eyes closed. "Willis," Edris Ni gasped, her voice breaking as she rushed forward, dropping to her knees beside him. Her fingers trembled as she brushed a strand of hair from his forehead. Waylon turned his head slowly, his gaze resting on Keven. "You came," he said, his voice low, carrying a weight that seemed to fill the cavern. "I wondered if you would." Keven stepped forward, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword, his eyes locked on Waylon. "You know why we're here. The transformation water, it's harming him." Waylon nodded slowly. "The water was meant to heal, to restore balance. But it is a dangerous force, drawn to those who carry deep wounds. Willis, he carries a wound that the water cannot mend. It seeks to consume him, to make him a vessel for its power." Edris Ni looked up, tears welling in her eyes. "Then how do we stop it? How do we save him?" Waylon's gaze softened, a flicker of something akin to sorrow in his ancient eyes. "The water is a reflection of the one who holds it. To heal Willis, he must face the wound within himself. The water will not harm him if he finds peace with what he carries." Keven's hand tightened on his sword hilt. "Peace, while he lies here, fading. What do we do now?" Waylon stepped forward, his movements silent and deliberate. "You do not need to fight me, Keven. I am not your enemy. I am the one who understands the water's nature." He knelt beside Willis, his hand hovering over the pale skin. "Willis," he murmured, his voice gentle, "the water is not your enemy. It is a part of you, a part that needs healing, not force. Let it flow, but let it find rest." And Willis stirred, a faint gasp escaping his lips. His eyes fluttered open, clouded with pain, but then focused on Waylon's face. I don't want to be alone," he whispered, his voice weak. Waylon's hand moved to rest gently on Willis' chest. "No, you are not alone," he said, his voice firm but kind. "You never were. Now, Nenda." Keven watched, his heart pounding, as Edris Ni's tears fell onto Willis' hand. The air in the chamber shifted, the tension easing into a quiet, profound stillness. The fight was over. The true battle was within, and it was being won not with swords, but with understanding. The transformation water, once a threat, now seemed to pulse with a gentle warmth around Willis, no longer a force of harm, but a quiet promise of healing. Keven felt the weight in his chest ease, the urgency replaced by a fragile, hard-won hope. He looked at Edris Ni, her face streaked with tears but holding a new light, and knew they had found the path, not just for Willis, but for themselves. The journey ahead would still hold challenges, but for now, the water was flowing, and so was hope. Thank you for being here. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and turn on the bell for updates. More beautiful stories are coming soon on YouTube channel, Many Stories with You.